Now I see CMX stealing Dana's gimmick, giving me the TikTok Shives. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you could join me. Glad I could join you. Whatever that means. I am a little flustered starting the show tonight. Everything's fine. It's going to be a good show. I'm happy to be here, but I was a little more rushed than I usually am before these live streams. I usually like to give myself about half an hour where I'm just kind of not doing anything leading up to the show so I can watch and, catch people posting their last second questions like Air One Fire did. And hey, Slug Racer with the trans flag. All right. But today was a little different because I got a new camera. It's the first new camera, like an actual, a new main camera for my YouTube channel. I upgraded my old, reliable, beloved Canon 70D, which I still have and I'm still going to use. But I am replacing it. Finally, I got a Canon 90D. And it just got here like an hour ago, and I was kind of playing with it and setting it up and doing some things with it. So I'm a little, I'm looking forward to the show. It's going to be a great show. And then as soon as we're done, I'm going to go play with my new camera because I need to figure out how to work it. The controls are basically the same as the one I have. It's not that much to learn, but I need to make sure it's working properly and that I know how to properly work it so I can use it to shoot my videos that I'm shooting tomorrow. So very exciting. Very exciting. Anyway, no, it's not. I'm not using it now. 25580. The webcam I'm using is the same camera I always use. I don't webcast with my DSLR. Although I could, I guess you can use it that way. But I just have a webcam that I'm using for this. No, my good videos, my written, pre-recorded, edited videos. That I release throughout the week. They will from now on will be, and I mean, you might not notice a difference. It might not look all that different. The camera I just got can shoot in 4K. I haven't decided if I'm going to start doing every single video I do in 4K or not, but now that's an option. So anyway, that's exciting. No, it's not that. Oh, you mean really big? Air One Fire? You mean really big in terms of people using them, like popularity? Yeah. Yeah, I thought you meant really big, like size. I'm like, no, it's the exact same size as my old one. But anyway, so let's get started. The gushing over my new camera has been accomplished. No, Simon, you get the good. You know what? Tonight you get to see what will probably be the first of the last two Stuffy shorts ever shot on my Canon 70D, or at least primarily on my Canon 70D. Again, I'm still going to use it for stuff, but the main camera will be the 90D from now on. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for patiently listening to me talk about my new camera. And as always, I will be answering questions submitted ahead of time by my wonderful Patreon patrons and channel members. So if you are with us in the live chat and you have something that you want me to pay attention to in the live chat, or if you were planning on being generous and throwing in a super chat or anything like that, which is always welcome and I always encourage, if possible, please wait until I get through answering all of the patron and member questions, because until then, the food camera, I like that geek, the food camera. But until I get through all of those questions, I will not be paying super close attention to the live chat. I'm going to be focusing on the pre-submitted questions. So I won't be able to focus on the live chat until after I get through all of those. So please, if you have a question for me in the live chat or a super chat or whatever, try to hold on to it until I get through the patron and member questions. And this is a little bit of a milestone because this is the last batch of patron and member questions that I am accepting with a 1,000 character limit for the question. Starting in 2 weeks at the next Ask Away number 200, the character limit for questions shrinks to 500 characters, which will hopefully help me to get through all of the questions more quickly. So here we go. You are more than tolerable, David. You are more than tolerable. Anyway, patron and member questions. Here we go. So the first one comes to us from Jen, who says, if Schindler's Trump, if you want to keep the language clean, why start now? Military attacks on U.S. citizens actually happen, how should people who are rural prepare differently from those in larger towns and cities? Well, I mean, I guess the biggest difference when you live in a rural area as opposed to an urban area is you're cut off from public services, and you're cut off from other people. So if you find yourself in a position where you might need to rely on other people, where you might need to know who your friends are and where they are, and to know where you can go, and where you need to go if you need help, or you need some kind of service or whatever. Make sure you have all those ducks in a row. If you live in a less urban area, make sure that you have a plan. Make sure that you and your friends in the area are, if you fear that this may happen, organize, make a plan, figure out, okay, like if worse comes to worse and we find ourselves, being harassed or even worse by Trump sending goons around, like what do we do? Whose house do we go to? How do we take care of ourselves if it comes to that? Like, just, you probably are going to have to do a lot more legwork in terms of organizing to make sure that your ducks are all in a row and your contingency plans are in place if if such a thing happens. So I think that's probably the main difference. That has to happen in a city as well, but you as an individual might not have to worry about as much yourself because there are so many more people around, and there's just a lot more, even if it's not like formalized government infrastructure. Although given how unpopular Trump's deployments of National Guard troops have been, I mean, if you do live in a city, you can probably rely at least somewhat on your city government and maybe even your state government to help you out. But there are just more people around, so there are more people to do what needs to be done. Whereas in a rural area, there's less people and they're more spread out, so you need to make sure that you know what's going on and what you need to do in a particular circumstance. The Biased Babylonian. So I loved the B5 reference in your recent retro review, and remember you compared it to DS9 a while back. Offhand, do you ever plan on covering B5 content, or is it not really your thing? DS9 is my favorite Trek, and I love B5 for how real it seems, similar to 2003 Battlestar Galactica, where characters have real flaws and overcome problems. I mean, yeah, I think Babylon 5 was a great show. Like, I loved Babylon 5. I mean, I would totally do a video about it if I could come up with an idea for one. I'm not really actively looking for something to do about Babylon 5. Part of it is like, even though it's a really, really great show and I absolutely love it, it hasn't played as big of a role in my life as Star Trek has, and I just don't think about it as much or have as many opinions about it or as many takes about it as I do for Star Trek, so it just doesn't suggest itself as naturally to me for video content. But yeah, I mean, I would do a video or two about Babylon 5 if I could think of a specific topic, for sure. Commander Riker. Good to know you, sir. Have you taken a walk on a holodeck recently? When was the last time you attended an android's poetry reading? Do you ever worry that you might be trapped in the mirror universe? How much latinum would it take for you to spend a night in a Jeffries tube? Used any turbolifts lately? Ever suspected that your captain might be possessed? Ever had an erotic dream about a ghost? Can you play the trombone? Ever been involved in a transporter accident? Ever felt bereft of passion and imagination? How tall was the tallest Vulcan you've ever met? Ever had a job as an ensign? Worried about changelings? Do you like to go a-wandering by the pale warp core? What would you do with the powers of a Q? Do you have a pet targ? Have you ever confused your ship's computer with a betazoid? But then, how do you explain the Admiral's behavior? It's false. That's false. It's fake. No way, not this time. We made it all up. Nicely done. Nicely done. I think Frakes himself would be proud. I only wish I couldn't have, if I were really trying to get it as accurate as possible, I would have said every sentence like from a different camera angle and from a different position in my, my weird, creepy office set that I shoot my TV show from. But that was well done. Thank you for that. Becky, my 18-year-old has gone from a left-leaning young adult with concerns to an angry socialist over the past few weeks. He's also gone from thinking we could probably start turning things around in the midterms to doubting whether we'll have another election, period. I don't know what to tell him other than took you long enough to get here. How do we keep young folks' spirits up and encourage them not to give up when we don't even believe ourselves? I would say tell your 18-year-old that he is not the only person to feel the way he feels, that a lot of people, both his age and older, have. And you know, you say he's sort of come to this realization in the last few weeks, over the last 10 years or so, especially. Before that as well, obviously, but over the last 10 years or so, especially, a lot of people have had a similar awakening, a similar moment where they're like, oh my God, I need to start paying attention to this stuff. And maybe our problems are a lot more serious than I thought they were. And I need to stop acting like this doesn't involve me or whatever. Like, a lot of people have had that realization. And there are way more people in this country who are against what is going on than support it. The trick now is to find ways of mobilizing enough of us to make a difference and figuring out what the most effective ways of making that difference are. So, I mean, look, things are bleak, things are bad. I'm not trying to downplay that at all, but all is not lost. There is still a lot of hope and a lot of potential to turn things around, even though it's going to take a while and it's going to be a lot of work. And we have a very deep hole to dig ourselves out of, but it can be done. I think it will be done. But you know, the most important thing and is to motivate people to realize that it needs to be done. And the hope is, as I think it always is with any country, not just the United States, with any country, the hope lies in the people. And the people, or at least enough of the people, finding the wisdom and the will to do what they have to do to fix things. William Tucker, love is a mystery, hope is a wonder. How do you stay positive in a web of lies when the spider is waiting for the unpropitious? Zombies seem to have taken hold. Aim for the heart, Steve. We need to strike them where they are most vulnerable. You're like making me think. I think it's because I just saw Spider-Man again on the big screen not too long ago, making me think of the Green Goblin. His heart, Osborn. First, we attack his heart. I don't think that's what you were trying to. I don't think you were trying to summon the villain of Spider-Man, but nevertheless, it made me think of that. Aim for the heart or the head. That'll take care of a zombie too. But you know. Actually, most of the zombies are not vulnerable. Most of these zombies are not vulnerable to the head. They stopped using their heads long, long ago. So maybe the heart is a better metaphor. Yeah, you stay positive in a web of lies by noticing that they are lies and keeping track of who tells them and remembering who those people are and what lies they told, even after, you know, all of this, or at least the worst of this, is over. That's part of it. And like I've said before, you know, having faith in the fact that this won't last forever, that history is a wheel that turns. And again, it doesn't mean it's going to fix itself automatically. It's not. We have to do the turning, but if we do that, you know, that's how that works. We are not at the, you know, the very end point, you know, point of no return. There's no coming back from this, even though things are bad and will probably continue to get worse for a little while. Some Random Geek, the official agitprop radical anarchist of the Steve Shives channel. Since this is the last Ask Away where I have 1,000 characters per question, I will lay off the origins of charitylinks.page and my sort of goal with it. Before, I would dump the links to Joanna in Phoenix's Begging Bowl and GoFundMe, and then others asked if I could drop their links too. Once it became about 10 people, someone suggested to put all those links into a Google Doc and just share the link to that. Then my friend Marty Abernathy got the domain name of charitylinks.page. Marty also suggested that at the very end, I would have an essay or links to an essay or a YouTube video. Basically me going, if you notice that it is horrible how many people have to beg online in order to live and want to do something more about the system, well, let me tell you about capitalism. And then have links to glossaries and videos about what is anarchism, a way to spread my propaganda. Since someone coming to charitylinks.page wants to help poor people, maybe they become anti-capitalist. I mean, that's certainly a good motivation to become anti-cap. Nothing will turn you against anti-capitalist by seeing just how many people are unable to pay their bills or provide for basic necessities for themselves. And here's another one from the lazy anarchist, some random geek. I love that idea from Marty. Use charitylinks.page as a radicalization tool, but also provide links to orgs that are doing mutual aid and encouraging folks to do praxis and direct action. Way, way, way more valuable than voting. Before I go on my rant about the religion of voting, anyone can share around charitylinks.page. Anyone can share charitylinks.page. It is not an exclusive Steve Shives thing or a some random geek thing. Anyone can share the links around. My hope is that more eyeballs are on the links, that maybe someone is super rich and decides to get money to Joanna, Phoenix, Naz, and LQ, and others. But here is the truth for my friends that need money every month. With the upcoming recession and the government shutdown, they will for sure need money, as well as price increases. They all just need a glucose parent to be happy in this fucked up world. $1,500 a month for Joanna, $3,000 now for Phoenix to pay off the bills, and then $1,000 a month after that, $500 for Naz and LQ. And I will mention it again at the end of the show, and I'm sure Geek will put the links in the chat occasionally, but charitylinks.page. It is linked. It is easy to type in. It's easy to remember, charitylinks.page, and it is also linked in the description of this live stream that you are watching right now. So if you are able and willing to help out some of our friends whose info is linked in that doc, please, please, please do so. Faragrim, happy Friday. You strike me as a cinephile based on your knowledge of older actors. Do you have a favorite silver/golden age actor or actress, and what makes them your favorite? Mine is personally Vincent Price, not just for his horror work, but some excellent dramas he did. Vincent Price is a great pick. Golden or silver age. I really like Henry Fonda. I really like Gary Cooper. Cary Grant I don't think gets as much credit as for being an actor as he deserves. He's obviously remembered as a great star and a great leading man, but that dude was versatile. He could do action, he could do drama, he could do comedy, he could do incredibly goofy comedy, and do it well. So he was fantastic. Gloria Swanson may be one of my favorites of any era. I mean, she is one of my favorites of any era, but she may be right at the top of the list. If you have never seen Gloria Swanson, and I mean, her silent work is amazing. The silent work she did in the 20s is fantastic. And then she came back in 1951, I guess, 50 or 51, whenever Sunset Boulevard came out. If you can watch Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard and not just be floored by how brilliant she is, I don't know what to tell you. So Gloria Swanson is right at the top of my list as well. Yeah. All-time favorites are Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, but you specified silver golden age, and they were more sort of silent era stars. So I'm not sure if they would be included in your, in your range. But yeah, I have quite a few favorites from old movies, as you can tell. Darby, have you considered the perspective of a Star Trek universe obituary writer for your Starfleet job series? Oh, that's an interesting concept. I'm not sure. That might be one of the shorter ones. I'm not sure if I could sustain that for a 10 or 15 or 20-minute video like those videos typically are. But that's a really funny idea, because just think of all the grotesque and preposterous ways that people die in the Star Trek universe. Yeah, that that might be something. I'll add that to my list and see if I can do something with it at some point in the future. No promises, but that's a really good suggestion. Thank you very much for that. John Burns, if a financial bill fails in Parliament, since financial matters are of such importance, it means that the government falls, and usually the Prime Minister then informs the Governor General of this development, who may ask another party leader if they wish to form a government, but usually a new election just happens. Isn't this a better idea than having a government shutdown that is the fault of the parties, but not have new elections? Man, your political system is dumb. It's such a dumb system, even a Trump can dominate it. Anyway, thank God I live in Canada. You know, one of these days, something similar to what is happening here in the US is going to happen up there in Canada. One of these days, and I'm going to remember you said that, and I'm going to say, oh, how could fascists take charge in Canada? I thought it had the perfect political system. I mean, look, if I were Canadian right now, I'd be crowing too. Right? Because yes, your system definitely looks a lot better than ours from the standpoint of this point in history, because God, how could it not? But the weakest part of any political system is the people who have to operate it. And if any political system is operated by people who work in bad faith and who are anti-democracy and who don't care about the welfare of the people who they are representing and who they are supposed to be leading and providing services for and protecting, then that government is going to fail those people, whether it's our constitutional federal system or whether it's more of a parliamentary system like Canada has. Whatever the setup of the government is, it's always susceptible for if too many aggressively bad faith, malevolent people gain power within it, it can always be turned in a really, really bad way. But congratulations on that not happening in Canada yet. General Contact Unit problem child. I've told you before that I think IP is just a legal fiction needed so artists can make a living under capitalism. In a moneyless, Trek-like world, we don't need IP. You responded that even in that world, artists might still want to prevent their art from being used in ways they find objectionable, and so would still need rights to prevent that. You gave the example of Springsteen not wanting Trump playing Born in the USA. If you believe that, I don't get why you're in favor of art passing into the public domain eventually. Like, if you think IP is just about allowing artists to make money, that makes perfect sense, since the dead don't need money. However, if you bring in that moral control argument, I'm not sure it does make sense, since a lot of artists still wouldn't be okay with their art being used in ways they morally object to, regardless of if they're dead. Like, presumably, Springsteen wouldn't be okay with a fascist in 2337 using his song either, even if he won't be there to hear. Well, yeah, but the dead don't get a vote. I mean, I'm completely okay with works passing into the public domain after a certain period, because that period, whatever it is, whatever the law states it is, it's always after the death of the artist or the creator or whoever controlled the rights. After it's, so many years after that person dies, or it's such a long period, it's just written into law that it's so many years that almost certainly any artist that created it would have been dead by then. Most people who create a copyrighted work of art don't go on to live 95 or 100 years after the creation of the work. So if the period is that, or even if it's, 50 or 60 or 75 years, I mean, that's still a long time. I'm okay with it expiring at some point. I just think there should be a system in place, regardless of whether money is involved or not, where the creator of a work, the writer, the musician, the artist, whatever, at least during their lifetime, can control how that work is used. So if a bunch of Nazis want to play your song at their Nazi rally, you can legally say no. And if they do it anyway, you can take some kind of legal action to prevent them from doing it again, or to punish them for doing that without your permission. I just think that's right and fair. Now, after you die, like I said, after you die, that you don't get a vote anymore. The dead don't get a vote. How many of the founding fathers would have voted for the Voting Rights Act? Probably none of them. How many founding fathers would have voted for the Civil Rights Act? Probably none of them. Maybe Thomas Paine. I'll give my boy Thomas Paine some. Maybe Thomas Paine would have, but not too many. But it doesn't matter because they're dead. And we don't need to worry about what they would want. We should worry about what we need to do and what is best for people that are alive today. And to me, it's the same rationale for intellectual property rights. As long as an artist is alive, they should have the right to control how their work is published or shared or exhibited or whatever. And after they die, and maybe for a certain period of time after they're dead, maybe give their family a certain period of time to control it or whatever. But after the copyright period has lapsed, then it's public domain, and then fucking Nazis can play it at their rallies all they want. And the rest of us don't have to like it, but there's nothing we can do about it because the dead don't get a vote. But that's where I'm coming from on that. Don Quixote, military coups are usually frowned upon, but after Hegseth and Trump's meeting with the military leaders, they seem to be the people with their brains functioning normally. Would a coup be something you'd be okay with, or is that just trading one problem for another? That's trading one problem for another. I think some people are confusing or are a little confused, given like the very cold reception that Trump and Hegseth got to that big generals meeting, which apparently they expected was going to be like a rally and they were going to get applause and cheers and standing ovations from this room full of high ranking military officers. The reason, I mean, there were probably a lot of people in that room who agreed, at least who maybe they didn't agree with the way it was presented. Maybe they don't. I'm sure few, if any of them, take Pete Hegseth actually seriously as Secretary of Defense, given his level of experience and his own personal history and everything else about him. But I'm sure there are people who are sympathetic politically to some of the things he was saying, and are sympathetic in terms of like, you know, wanting people to get in shape and wanting to cut back on, you know, the push for inclusion and diversity. There are a ton of, you know, close-minded conservative guys and women in the military who are probably completely fine with much of what Hegseth said, but they didn't cheer him or applaud for him or whatever because they're professionals and they're serious people. So in that sense, it would be an improvement. If the military did take over, yes, the government would be run by professionals, by people who are competent, by people who take their jobs seriously. And I honestly believe most of them take their commitment to the Constitution and to defending the country very seriously. But that doesn't mean that politically it would necessarily be an improvement, because I'm sure there are a lot of backwards thinking people in the military at higher ranks and lower ranks, just as there are in every other walk of life. So, and also a military coup it's just about the least democratic thing you can do. And I still would kind of like to wrestle this back into being some semblance of a democracy at some point. So no, I am not in favor, even though I took a lot of Schadenfreude type pleasure from watching Hegseth and Trump bomb in front of the military when they clearly thought this was going to be like, you know, a really friendly room to them. That does not mean that I am advocating for or hoping for a military coup. Glenn H., who is definitely not AI generated. No AI could be this awkward. Hi, Steve. I missed the window last time to ask my question, so I am going to use my remaining 1,000 characters to get in some comments and my question. First, your last Stuffy and Friends was your best one. I laughed heartily from beginning to end, and I even saw the shirt twist coming, but I still laughed out loud, especially since his favorite shirt is a plain black one like he is wearing. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Second, to the clickbaiter that predicted that Captain Battelle would turn into a TOS-style Gorn, that was my idea. But I would have made it a joke, and she would just have her regular voice. I even picture a sitcom take where she wakes up, sees her Gorn face in the mirror, and screams. Finally, my question. In a previous Ask Away, someone asked a controversial question about the order that milk and cereal are mixed. That reminded me of this gem. Are you a sock, shoe, shoe person or a sock, shoe person? Your response may dictate the fate of my Patreon membership. Anyway, have a good show. It's one of the only things that I am in fervent agreement with Archie Bunker on. I am sock, shoe, shoe. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, just Google it or look it up on YouTube. It's you can see the scene more or less in its entirety from a classic All in the Family episode where Archie and Mike, aka Meathead, are arguing over how you should put on your socks and your shoes. Archie is very strongly in the sock and a shoe camp, whereas Mike is more in the sock in a shoe camp. And they both have very compelling arguments and very funny arguments for why they are right. I highly recommend it. It's a brilliant piece of, uh, of comedy, one of my all-time favorites. And I am Team Archie in that respect. Sock, sock, shoe, shoe. The Linguistical Legend, a debate by John here. Within the intersection of recent news items, with the resulting national temperature from the same tertiary, whatever the hell that's supposed to be, because of a question you were responding to last time about the attributes of neurodivergent versus neurotypical. I find myself remembering one person, wishing they could give their strong, well-informed, and common sense perspective in the present. In his 1990 stand-up special, Doing It Again, speaking of euphemistic language, George Carlin said, changing the name of something doesn't change the condition. For example, I personally experience cerebral palsy. Therefore, I'm a cripple. There's nothing wrong with the words cripples or crippled. Thoughts? Enough time has passed that this question is now appropriate. In my opinion, in the main, the practice which Charlie Kirk engaged in and Mehdi Hassan engages in is not true debate. It's speaking over people who they know, or at least they feel as though they are better informed than. Thoughts, Steve? I guess that's probably true, though. I mean, in Mehdi Hassan's case, he's usually right. He is better informed than the person he's talking to. And in Charlie Kirk's case, he was nearly always wrong. He was not better informed than the person he was talking to. And in fact, the reason he had chosen to talk to that person was because he thought he was better informed than they were, but he often wasn't, even if it was a college student. As far as you using the word crippled to describe yourself as someone with cerebral palsy, I think that is your right. I think you have the right to describe yourself using whatever language you feel is appropriate. I personally would not use that language to describe you or to describe anyone else who had a disability, just because I know that that word is offensive and hurtful to a lot of people. So and especially as someone who is not disabled, I would, I try to use the most broadly acceptable language that I can when I have to refer to things like that. So I would not use that word even to describe you, even though I know that that's a word you use for yourself. But if you want to use that word for yourself, it's not for me to tell you, how to identify yourself or what words to use to describe or to label yourself. Non sequitur questions of 2025. Hi, Steve. More ramblings of John. 1. Related to my first submission, this ask away referencing free speech. Why does YouTube have a list of words and or phrases people can't say on YouTube? 2. I've since fixed my recent Starcade blunder. Awesome. 3. Have you been able to view any of Monty Mader's content as of yet? 4. Recently, a viewer mentioned that in one of your more recent presentations, you shared your DVD collection. What is the title of that presentation? Related to that, did you, as I did, get caught up in the DVD zippered carrier bag craze of the early 2000s? I now really wish I had all the original cases. 5. In your reminder posts about these live streams, you always mention, please avoid mini essays cleverly disguised as questions. What do you mean by this? And what brought about its need to be stated? 500 characters, pish posh, we'll see, I can do it. Seriously, Steve and everyone else in your YouTube community, thanks for enduring my questions and thoughts since Ask Away number 180. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm sure lots of other people are glad you're here. I hope you continue to submit questions and to be a supporter for a long time to come. Let's see, number 1, I think it's probably an advertiser thing as to why YouTube has words and phrases that, you can say them for the most part. There's very few words you could say that would get you kicked off of YouTube. But it's just, if you say certain words or certain phrases or talk about certain subjects, it'll be harder to get monetized. So it's mostly an advertising thing. I'm glad you fixed your Starcade blunder. I have not watched any Monty Mader content. I do not remember off the top of my head what the title of the video was where I talk about my DVD collection. Sorry. And no, I did not ever have those zippered binders of DVDs or CDs. I never did that. It was always unthinkable to me to take even with music, but especially with a DVD or a Blu-ray, to take the disc out of the original case and just put it in a folder, put it in like a zippered carrying case. Like, I would never do that. I wouldn't, it wouldn't even occur to me to do that. Never, never, never. I would, it's like tearing the pages out of a book and just, stacking them up in a folder somewhere. I would never do that. No, I never did that. It never occurred to me to do that. I would never do that. I would never do that. I would probably never do that. And I'm very sorry that you regret losing your original cases. I feel like please avoid mini essays. It speaks for itself. Like, just get to the point. Theoretically, the whole purpose of this exercise is that you have questions for me, or you have topics you're curious about my thoughts on, or, whatever. So what is it? Like, what's your question? What would you like to know? I don't need, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but like, I don't need your life story. And I don't need, a long preamble before you ask the question. You can just ask the question. And I think 500 characters is plenty of space to not only to ask the question and to provide any necessary context, because sometimes context beyond the question itself is necessary, to understand what you're driving at, or why you're asking or whatever. But I think 500 characters is plenty. And it'll be a good writing exercise for some of you. It'll be an exercise in brevity. And brevity is the soul of wit. So they say, or said. I'm pretty sure the guy who said it's been dead for like 500 years. Havar Hojim, can you talk a little bit about why you never found it fun to play computer games or video games? I recall you said somewhere that you never were into gaming. Thanks. There are certain games over the years that I have enjoyed playing, both computer games and like console games. But no, it's hard to describe. It's just never appealed to me as like a regular hobby. Like when I was a pre-adolescent and a teenager, I had a Nintendo, and I would, play Nintendo for many, many hours. And even into my young adulthood, I think the last actual gaming console I ever owned was a PS2. And for a couple of years with that, I had not a huge game collection, but a decent game collection. But I was never someone that like would go out and buy whatever the hot new game was. It had to be something that I was interested in, so it would be like, a baseball game or a wrestling game or a zombie game or a tie-in game for a superhero that I was interested in. Like if there was a new Batman game or Spider-Man game or whatever, like it was something that I was interested in and the game looked fun and I would try it out. But eventually I just tired of it. It's hard to describe. I don't know if there is a specific reason why. It's not something that I enjoyed enough that it became like a thing that I regularly do. And now, every once in a while, I might play a game, usually not for very long, but when I have free time and I'm not working, if I want to, do some kind of leisure activity indoors, I'm going to watch a movie or watch a TV show. I don't want to play a video game, or I very, very, very rarely want to play a video game. I'd much rather, there are so many great movies that I still haven't seen that I would, if I am in if I have an evening free where I have a few hours to just do whatever I want to do, chances are I'm going to be watching a movie or watching a TV show rather than playing a video game. That's just where my interest lies. That's just how my mind works. That's just what I'm interested in and what I want to do. So I can't really describe it in any more detail than that. JDC, hey Steve, hope you're doing well. I think I'm going to ask the depressing media question this time. Why is the writing so bad on so many TV shows and movies? Shouldn't paying a person to invent a compelling story, like people have probably been doing since long before they started writing any of it down, be the easy part to get right? Shouldn't the financial incentives be against spending millions on effects, sets, locations, salaries for like 1,000 professionals, etc., before you've got a good story nailed down? And yet, yes and no. In certain ways, the writing of the story is the most difficult part to get right, because you not only, especially when you're writing for TV or movies, because the writing of the script is just I almost said the first step. It's often not the first step, but it is an early step. It is a previous step to everything else. Like everything else that happens is built on top of that script. All those decisions about effects and sets and locations and who to cast and, all of that comes from the needs of the script. So if you don't get the script right, then it can very easily sink everything else because every other decision will be based on that. And if the script is wrong, then everything else could potentially be wrong as well. So it's not as easy as it sounds. But aside from that, you also have to remember this is all subjective. There's no such thing as an objectively good script or an objectively good story. It's all based on people's opinions and people's taste. And unfortunately, in the movie and TV business, especially at the higher levels when the budgets are in the millions of dollars and there is a lot of money at stake to be made or lost, a lot of the people who are in charge of deciding where that money gets spent and what movies get made and what TV shows get made are more worried about making their investment back than they are about making a good show, whatever that even means to them, if they even care. And, that kind of attitude, conflicts with the creative process pretty severely. It's one thing to have a creative disagreement with another person who also is interested in making a good show and they just have a different idea of what a good show is. Like that can create problems and you can have, a butting of heads from that as well. But at least that's between two creatively minded people who just have different ideas of which way to go. More often than not in Hollywood and show business in general, it's not a conflict between two creatively minded people. It's a conflict between a creatively minded person or creatively minded people on one side who are trying to get their movie or their show done, and people on the other side who are holding the purse strings, who have no concept of creativity, who don't care about what a good TV show is, who have no opinions on the matter, who have no taste, whether it would agree or disagree with the creative people in question or not, who see it purely as a product. And all they want is a movie or a show that they think will appeal to the right people, to attract the right advertisers, or the right people to buy tickets, or the right people to stream it, or whatever. They just see it as a calculation that needs to be dialed in the right way to get their money. And when you're a creative person working in that system with those people making decisions that affect what you do, that can be a really difficult situation. So it's, there's always been good writing. There's always been bad writing. I think there are a lot of challenges that make it difficult for the good writing to break through. Potaters, your real name, no doubt. I'm asking a question, finally. First one this year, I think. That channel membership and Patreon subscription really paying for themselves at this point. Anywho, I was wondering, which description of Khan do you think is more racist? A. Bendelbert Crumblepatch from Into Darkness, i.e. a white man and a British man at that, playing an Indian. Or B. Ricardo Montalban from TOS, i.e. Indian, Mexican, who cares? Foreigners are all the same if they're not white. I'm leaning towards Bender Stick Cuddlehatch, as so far as I'm aware, Mexico wasn't responsible for colonizing the entire subcontinent Khan is supposed to be from. Which do you think is more problematic? I think it's Crimble Crust that is the most problematic. I think in terms of that, I think the casting in Into Darkness is more problematic because, I mean, yes, you're right. Casting Ricardo Montalban to play a South Asian character is problematic because he's not. And just because, he has dark hair and, and tan skin, he can pass for an Indian guy. Like, okay, but that's, it's not necessarily the only thing to consider. There are actors from India who could play this part, right? Why don't we get one of them? But so it's problematic either way. But yes, because Cumberbatch is white and British, Um, and the character is known to be from India or South Asian in some respect. That's never really mentioned in that movie. Like the one sort of out you can give them in Into Darkness, if you want to give them as much benefit of the doubt as possible, you can say, well, the ethnicity of Khan, or the ethnicity that Khan is supposed to be, is information that a viewer will have to bring to the film from having seen other Star Trek stuff. There's nothing, at least to the best of my recollection, and if I'm wrong about this, please correct me. But to the best of my recollection, there's nothing actually in Star Trek Into Darkness that says this guy is from India, or this guy is of South Asian ethnicity, or is meant to be, right? Now, I think that's kind of a flimsy excuse, but it's there, right? They can say, well, there's nothing in the movie that, yes, his name is Khan, but there's nothing in the movie that says he's of any particular ethnicity. Okay. But if you accept that Khan is meant to be a South Asian character, or was originally a South Asian character in, previous versions, and then has now been, played by a white European actor, then yeah, to me, that's more problematic. Jim P., Honorable Steve, sometimes I get aggravated with liberals and progressives because it seems like they think their votes are a gift they bestow onto the Democratic Party when the candidates are perfect. As you mentioned last time, basically the only candidate you will 100% agree with would be you if you ran for office. Is there anything we can do collectively to help people realize if they want a more liberal Democratic Party, they need to be not only vocal, but active, reliable voters for Democrats? Why would I, if I were a Democratic politician, listen to you if I can't rely on you? Anyway, here's hoping this craziness ends soon. I mean, maybe it would be effective to cite the example of the Republican Party, because that's exactly what happened to the Republican Party. Why did the Republican Party lurch so suddenly in Trump's direction? And most of that is cosmetic. The Republican Party has always mostly supported the same stuff that Trump supports. It's just now they're a lot more open and unapologetic about it. But there has been at least a tone change, if nothing else, in the party. And the reason for that is they saw that's where the votes were. So that's where they went. If the Democratic Party sees that the votes are with people on the left and progressives and people who want universal health care and people who want to fight for equal rights for women and gay people and trans people and immigrants and people of color, and to actually take that seriously and make that a priority instead of just saying, well, hey, you're better off with us than with them. If they see that that's where the votes are, then that's where the party will go. I don't know how clearer to make it. That's where the party will go if they see that as the route to winning elections and gaining power. It's really not that complicated as an idea. It can be complicated to actually make it happen because you have to motivate people and mobilize people, convince people after all these years that no, it is worth voting and you should vote for the Democrats. But as a concept, it's pretty basic. If we vote for them and we do it enough times and in large enough numbers, then the party will represent us because we're the ones who are empowering the party. And eventually we'll be the ones who are putting up candidates to represent the party and elect. Like, that's just how this works, So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Wolfram and Hart, Steve, Batman-focused question, which baffles many comic book readers, and with upcoming Batman and Damian DCU movie should be clarified, even though an uncomfortable question to ask. Why did Grant Morrison, when he introduced Damian Wayne in Batman 655 and 656, strongly insinuate he was a product of Talia al Ghul drugging Bruce Wayne and thus non-consensual? Supposedly, it was meant to follow a much earlier Ra's al Ghul storyline, but it was never implied before Bruce and Talia's attraction. It was never implied before Bruce's and Talia's attraction wasn't real and mutual, though unhealthy, as daughter of one of Batman's main enemies. So why then, unnecessary for the plot or character development, add this discomforting element? Why suggest Talia would use a love potion to seduce Wayne when Damian was conceived? the animated series episode with Roz and Talia, Bruce really was smitten with her and in real life would have been PO'd to have discovered she drugged him. It's such a strange decision on what wasn't part of their original storyline before. I mean, you'd have to ask Grant Morrison because I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I suppose the intention could have been to put even more of a villainous spin on Talia to make us be against Talia and for Bruce even more, to put more sympathy on Bruce, to say like, oh, you know, she took advantage of him. You know, he didn't even really consent to having a child with her. That's just how evil she is. Like maybe that was the idea. I don't really think that was necessary, but maybe that was the idea. But you're right. I mean, and a lot of it also, it depends on what they decide at any given moment is canon and what isn't. There was um, a Batman comic in I think the late 80s or early 90s written by Mike W. Barr called Son of the Demon that was like a one shot about Batman and Ra's al Ghul where Batman and Talia have sex consensually, you know, because they like each other. And as far as anybody knows, if Talia all of a sudden pops up with a kid and Batman's the daddy, well, why not say it's from that? You know, problem solved. Like, but yeah, I don't know why they insinuated that there was some kind of love potion or some kind of drug involved. Because I really, like you say, it makes things too complicated. It introduces, you know, an element that is kind of distracting and doesn't really add anything. Because I mean, I think we're clear that Ra's al Ghul and Talia are the bad guys. I don't think we need to add any more fuel to that. Brian McKinley, hey Steve, I was wondering if you were a fan of the 80s miniseries V and its sequel, V, The Final Battle. These two, along with Star Trek reruns and Star Wars, were my introduction to science fiction as a kid and still beloved to me today. If you have seen them, do you have a favorite character or moment? I watched V, or at least I watched parts of V when I was very young. I have never watched it as an adult. I haven't been avoiding it. It's just one of those things. I mean, I haven't watched everything, you know, and I haven't got around to watching it. But I vividly remember the scenes of the visitors like tearing their flesh off to reveal their reptilian skin beneath. And that kind of fucking me up as a little kid, you know, seeing that and going like, what's going on? I remember that. But I don't remember anything too specific about characters or plot or anything like that. But maybe one of these days I'll go back and actually give it a proper watch. Agent Meister, is he the hero of his own story or just another red shirt in someone else's? Why not both? Peldor Joy, Steve, after watching your video about the time period, it reminded me of the TNG finale, All Good Things. Picard and company must investigate an anomaly across 3 time periods, which was paradoxically created by 3 enterprises using a tachyon pulse. But in the future, the tachyon pulse is used by the Pasteur, not the Enterprise. I read somewhere that one of the writer's daughters brought this snafu to his attention, which resulted in FFSs all around, or so goes the rumor. My point is, one miscalculation notwithstanding, the execution behind both All Good Things and the Time Pyramid resulted and will hopefully result in respectfully 2 pieces of art that are lauded and loved by audiences for some time to come. As I said, I enjoyed your TP video. As always, it was well thought out and presented, so I'd like to use the last few characters of my last 1,000-character message to say that you really fit Quintilian's definition of an orator. A good man who speaks well. All the best. Well, thank you very much for that wonderful compliment. Maybe you'll find space in the 500 character limit to pay me a compliment every once in a while too. I don't know. I'm just, you know, but no, I thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, I've noted, here's the thing about that plot hole, if you want to call it that, in All Good Things. I never noticed it a single time when I was watching the episode. I never noticed it until someone else who had noticed it pointed it out. And then the first time that I watched the episode after I was aware of it, I didn't think about it a single time. I forgot all about it. I didn't care. So I don't care. and if I were the writer whose daughter had brought that to his attention, I would have, said, oh, rats. If I had it to write over again, I guess I might have fixed that. But other than that, like, it's a great episode. So who cares? Nobody's perfect. It's not that big of a deal. Lynn Kibblemom, still proudly crazy after all these years. Hi, Steve. Who is the person you are most thrilled to have met? For me, it's Sally Ride while she was in training for her first shuttle mission on Challenger STS-7, becoming the first American woman in space. I was an AF captain assigned to the NASA training staff at JSC. My civilian supervisor had been at NASA since the Mercury program, which was awesome, but couldn't compare to meeting Sally. We were both deeply closeted at the time. I came out a few years later, but she remained closeted until her death in 2012, when her female partner of 27 years was revealed. A sad coda to a life of courage and achievement. I haven't really met that many famous people or people who I would, be awestruck by. I met Richard Dawkins, and that was cool at the time. I'm not super enthused about it in retrospect, now that he has turned out to be such a piece of shit. But at the time, I didn't know any of that, and I didn't realize that he was going to turn out to be such a transphobic asshole. I mean, he was already, it wasn't, he was, I have to take ownership of it. He was already outspokenly Islamophobic at the time I met him. So I have to kind of, acknowledge that. He wasn't like an idol when I met him at the time, but it was at least exciting to meet him. And like, oh, hey, the guy who wrote The God Delusion. And more importantly to me, even the guy who wrote Growing Up in the Universe and presented it on TV. That was, I love Growing Up in the Universe. It was really cool to meet Richard Dawkins and to work with him a little bit. I did a little tiny bit of videography for the Richard Dawkins Foundation 10 years ago, something like that. And that was neat. I got to work with Richard Dawkins for a day. It was really cool at the time. Again, now, not so much. Not exactly something I'm like, I look back on and go, oh, wow, wasn't that cool? Not so much. But that's really the only story that comes to mind. Like I said, I haven't really met all that many famous people. It's never really been like a driving force of mine. And I've never worked in, a line of work like you did where I would run across, people I admired like that. The Grumpy Monkey. He's a punk rocker. Yes, he is. Oh, yeah. Now it's in my head. How now, Steve? In yesterday's Enterprise, Guinan, when confronted by Tasha, tells her that she died a pointless death in the other timeline. I absolutely love this episode, but I've always had a beef with this aspect of it. In Skin of Evil, Armus prevents Riker and company from helping Deanna and Ben, and Tasha's like, buddy, we don't have time for your bullshit, then makes a move toward the crashed shuttle. The rest is history. I wouldn't call that a pointless death. Sudden? Yes, it took the legs out from under me when I first saw it, but not pointless. She died attempting to help her crewmates. If Armus had just picked her out at random when she was just standing there, then yeah, that would be pointless. Not good enough, damn it, not good enough. Only joking. I try not to nitpick, and I hope you don't think that's what this is. I'd just like to know if I missed something, or is it, to paraphrase your good self, that Tasha needed to think she died an empty death because the story needed her to? You got it exactly. That's it. Her death was not even depicted as completely void of meaning at the end of the episode where she died. I mean, as you say, it was, it was not like the most heroic death that you could have had. Like she was killed as a demonstration of Armus's power, but she was challenging him. She was making a move to help her friends. She was acting in a brave and courageous and selfless way. And it didn't really make any difference to the situation at the time. But, she was being a hero, and she was struck down. And it was not presented as like a completely pointless death in Skin of Evil. She was presented as a Starfleet officer who did her duty and was trying to protect her comrades. So it's not a meaningless death in that context, but I think they played up the suddenness of it and the fact that she was killed so effortlessly by Armus, that it was so quick and such a shocking death. They played that up and made it seem more empty than it actually was at the time, because for Tasha's character in that episode, she needed that motivation. You know, she needed to believe that her death, her original death, was empty, and that she's not supposed to be here now. And in order to redeem herself and make her life and perhaps her death really count for something, she needs to make the decision she makes at the end of yesterday's Enterprise and join the crew of the doomed ship. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The story needed her too. Yeah. Danny K. Hi, Steve. No question this week, but let's take a brief moment to laugh at the Yankees. Ha, 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 ha. Thanks. Hope all is well. You know, things are always at least a little bit well when the Yankees have been eliminated from the postseason. So, yes, all is well. David Colby would have had a question, but a Metron changed it. Boy, you know. So I was on Twitter, Blue Sky, and someone there mentioned that Terrarium implies that the Metron are going to delete everyone in the entire Federation's memories of the Gorn. I never got to Terrarium because 4.5 Vulcans is one of the most racist things I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's so fucking racist, it makes me question the morality of the people writing it. Like, what the fuck? How did you think this was an acceptable product? What is fucking wrong with you? But anyway, I have to know, does Terrarium actually really end with a global reset in every single Gorn episode? Please tell me they're mistaken. I don't think I could take an ass pull that utterly contemptuous of my and your time. No, that does not happen. The Metron mentions something about how someday the Metrons may find it necessary to adjust the Federation's awareness of the Gorn or something like that. It's kind of vague. It hints that maybe something like that will be coming, or maybe something like that occurs between Strange New Worlds and Classic Trek, which accounts for why the crew of the Enterprise, when they encounter the Gorn in Arena, don't seem to be as familiar with them as they would be given the events of Strange New Worlds. But that's all. There is no actual reset. Everybody remembers the Gorn at the end of the show. That does not happen, but it is the possibility is floated by the Metron. And I don't like that either. Like, that's a dumb decision too. I mean, having the Metron be there at all is a terrible decision. But you know, it's that having the suggestion of, well, maybe we'll tinker with your memories, you know, so that this is a little bit more in continuity with the other show. Like, that's unnecessary. That's dumb. That only serves to pander to the delicate sensibilities of people who are way too attached to the consistency of canon created across 60 years of television. Fuck it. I don't think it should ever be done or ever even thought about being done, but it's not, but they don't actually hit a reset button. It's not that bad. So take some solace in that. Simon Moody. Hey, Steve. So you've been doing this for a fair while now, and I get the strong impression you'd be more than happy for this to be what you do as a job for as long as possible. So I was wondering, when you started, did you consider if you'd use your own name or go with an alias? Most YouTubers I watch go au naturel, and if they don't, they tend to not hide their real names. Was this never even a conversation you had with yourself? And since then, have you had cause to either reconsider or just wonder about that decision? I mean, when I started my channel, the name of the channel was Steve Likes to Curse, just because back then people who started YouTube channels always had like a title for the channel as opposed to just using their name. So that's just what I came up with kind of on the spur of the moment. But I never used an assumed name. And when the time came to just be Steve Shives and to just make that the channel, I didn't balk at that. I never had a problem with that. I never really thought about using an alias or anything. And I have not had cause to regret it. I mean, all of the bullshit and harassment and abuse that I have occasionally been targeted for on YouTube would have happened no matter what name I was using, you know, so it really doesn't make a difference. So no, that was never really something I considered and not something I ever did. Greg Gildersleeve, what do you think should have happened in Picard season 2 and 3? Would the show have been better if the new characters such as Rios, Girardi, and Elnor had remained instead of being discarded in favor of a TNG love fest? How do you think the show might have developed? Well, I can't speak to whether or not it would have been better. We don't know. But I can say it would certainly have been a more interesting creative decision for me. And I would be much more interested, even though I was never a huge fan of the Picard show, especially after season 2, which I still think is the single worst season of television any Star Trek show has ever done by a very, very wide margin. So, I mean, Picard was never like my absolute favorite show to begin with, but I would much rather see a show about new characters than a 30 years late reunion show, you know? So, I mean, how would that have changed the show? I mean, they would have had to come up with a story other than Captain Picard and the crew of the Enterprise D basically, strolling down memory lane for 10 episodes in season 3. They would have had to come up with something else. And I mean, I talked about this with Jason at the time when we reviewed season 3. Even though season 3 was definitely an improvement on season 2, the fact remains, if I were a fan of the show, if I did like Picard season 1 and Picard season 2, or if I at least liked the characters or felt some attachment to this show and where it was going, I would have felt kind of insulted by season 3. I would have felt like, oh, so that show that you just spent 2 seasons trying to get me invested in, just fuck that, I guess. Never mind. We're going back to the old shit. We're doing a TNG reunion. We're bringing everybody back. Fuck it. The show we were trying to do where it was Picard and occasionally 7 of 9, but mostly like new characters that we're trying to establish and build up. Fuck it. We're not doing that anymore. Forget that. Bring in Worf. Get Worf in here. Like that just, it feels like it's the creative equivalent of giving up. It feels like they gave up on the show they were trying to do. And that's disappointing and that's frustrating. And also it's not that interesting. It's boring. I don't know if the show would have been better. It may have been worse. It may have been even worse, but at least it would have been itself instead of fan service, instead of an attempt to conjure memories of an old show, So, I mean, I would be much more curious to see a season 3 of Picard that still had Rios and Girardi and Elnor and the other original characters in very prominent, Soji, poor Soji. She got, I mean, they wrote her off, and for some reason they wrote off her doppelganger from the 21st century. She's not coming back at all. I would be more curious to see another season of those characters than I would, let's do TNG season 8, 30 years too late. No, please miss me with that. Andy Lawler, who's thinking about taking some physics and engineering classes so he can build a time machine and maybe fix some things. Well, just don't step on any butterflies. Hey, Steve, my middle daughter is trans and coincidentally an enormous drag enthusiast. And our frequent viewings of clips from RuPaul's Drag Race and Trixie and Katya, among so many delightful others, we bandy about our ideas for drag names. The best one I've come up with, being a long COVID patient, is Persis Tantkoff. Waits for laughter and applause to subside. That's just... Have you ever thought about the drag name under which you would perform? You're a creative and funny guy. You've got to have a winner up your sleeve. Thanks and have a great weekend, everybody. I assure you, I do not. And it's not because I have anything against drag or I feel like I'm, too good for it or whatever. I've never paid any specific attention to it. I've never watched a single episode of Drag Race. I've never been interested in drag as like a cultural thing, other than supporting drag queens who are being like fucking, pummeled and scapegoated by bigoted right-wingers and treated like child predators just because they do drag shows. Other than that, other than being sort of champions of them just as a targeted group, I'm just, it's not my thing. I'm not into it. I have no strong opinions on it other than I think it's generally a good thing and should be allowed. People who like it should be allowed to do it. But no, so I'm sorry to disappoint you. I do not have a drag name under which I would ever perform, even as a joke. I'm sorry. I'm too much of a square to have an entertaining answer to this question. None yo business. Have you seen Murder in a Small Town? The 3rd episode of the 2nd season was this week. Malcolm Jamal Warner was in the episode. Any thoughts you'd like to say about him would be okay to me. I have not seen Murder in a Small Town, so unfortunately I did not see Malcolm Jamal Warner in the episode. I always liked him, you know. One of the shames of having the Cosby Show ruined forever by the fact that the star of it turned out to be a fucking monster is that you don't get to see how great the supporting cast was. And I mean, Felicia Rashad was brilliant, and Malcolm Jamal Warner as Theo was always an incredibly likable, funny presence. And, you know, the character, as the character got older and sort of grew and changed, the ways in which he was funny changed, and Warner was always able to adjust to that. And, you know, Theo at the end of the show, when he's graduating from college and he's an adult and he's more independent and he's more willing to sort of stand up to his dad. And, you know, they have tension all through the series. That's a big driver of the comedy, is that the father-son tension between them. But, you know, it changes as Theo grows up and becomes a little bit more empowered, and Malcolm Jamal Warner was able to adjust to that and to roll with that and to keep Theo as a really funny and a really likable character all the way through. So I mean, he was a terrific performer, and it's a terrible shame that he was taken like that and at such a relatively young age. So you know, he will be missed because he was terrific. Isaiah Taylor. So, Steve, I really liked your video on the Zeitpyramide, time pyramid in Germany. I've always been fascinated by the concept of time capsules. One of my favorite is the Crypt of Civilization, an underground chamber located in Atlanta, Georgia, containing relics from the 1930s set to be opened in the year 8113 CE. I'm more partial to the Voyager Golden Record, which is sort of a time capsule. That's my favorite. Are time capsules a form of art, Steve? Here's a pic of my shuttle flight suit. And this is the pic of Isaiah's shuttle flight suit that he shared with me. That is super cool. That is a really cool looking. It looks, I mean, it's hard to tell from that picture, but I'm sure, given your eye for detail, that it is very, very authentic. It looks great. And yes, I think time capsules are a form of art. They're, I mean, most immediately a form of history, but yes, they're a form of art as well. Of course, they're They're not just preserving dry facts. They're preserving culture. They're preserving like a snapshot of the time in history when they were, you know, when the capsule was sealed. And that is a creative decision. Those are creative decisions that need to be made. It's absolutely a form of art. Matthias, the Vulcan proverb, only Nixon could go to China, seems a bit of a random addition to Star Trek VI, but seems bizarrely true. Do you reckon it's equally bizarrely true to say only Trump could have gone to Gaza? Though perhaps with Trump being even more unashamedly pro-Israeli than all of his predecessors, the logic would be the other way around. If there's only one good thing to come out of Trump's presidency and this ceasefire becomes a lasting peace, then I hope this is it. Thoughts? I don't know. I mean, yes, obviously, if the ceasefire proves to be a lasting peace, then yes, I hope that is the case as well. But in terms of making a comparison between only Trump could have gone to Gaza and only Nixon could have gone to China, I mean, I guess you can look at it from certain angles where it's the same thing. You could say, you know, because the reason people said only Nixon could go to China was because Nixon was such a well-known enemy of communism that Nixon could go to China and nobody in the United States could ever argue that in doing so, that in going to China and in negotiating with their government and in acknowledging their government by visiting them and negotiating with them and you know, just treating them as equals, nobody could ever argue that Nixon had bent the knee or that the United States was now somehow obligated to or subservient to China. Because it was Nixon, and Nixon would never do that. He hates commies. Like, that's kind of where that concept comes from. And in Star Trek VI, it's a similar thing because, you know, Captain Kirk hates Klingons. So, Of course, Captain Kirk should be the leader of the mission to begin diplomacy with the Klingons because, of course, Captain Kirk's not going to take any shit and they're not going to turn Captain Kirk to their side or whatever people might worry about. So it's the same kind of thing. With Trump saying, I mean, you could say, well, Trump's no fan of the people of Gaza. So, of course, only he could go to Gaza. But then you're putting Gaza in a much more powerful position than they actually are in. Like the dominant power in that conflict is Israel, not Gaza, so, and I think Trump certainly is very much on the side of Israel. Certainly he isn't on the side of Gaza and hasn't been historically. But if you put Trump's, let's say, indifference at best toward the people of Gaza on the same level as Nixon's anti-communism, then I guess you can make that analogy, but it's a little sloppy to me. MW Ridra, Steve, I have a confession. For years now, there is an old man that every day I find myself wishing I'd received news that he had died. Not violently, just expire. He is a terrible person, and the world would be demonstrably better off with him gone. And he keeps showing signs of terminal illness, and yet, every morning, for years, I find that this fucker is still alive somehow. I have another confession. There's actually several old men that I feel this exact way about. Not a single one wants to shuffle off their mortal coil. Do you ever find yourself feeling this way? I feel a younger me would condemn current me for this attitude, but younger me was an idiot. I do find myself feeling that way. Yes, I do find myself hoping that certain people will have departed from this plane of existence. But, while I was asleep, I do long to wake up and turn on my phone and read that news. Yes, I do. I don't know. See, maybe your younger version and my younger version, I don't know if I was ever so idealistic that I would have said, oh, you mustn't think that, But yeah, younger you was not an idiot. Younger you just doesn't know what current you knows. That's all. And that's the explanation for that. You know better because you've been here longer and you've seen some shit that younger you hasn't seen yet. Russell. Hey, Steve, I will be working late, so not sure when I'll be home. Might have to read your answer later. Also, last Q&A to utilize 1,000 character limit, so here goes. In regards to retro Star Trek from TOS to Enterprise, who is your favorite doctor and first officer? My pick would be the EMH, believe it or not, and Mr. Spock. Been watching a lot of classic Trek lately and wondering your thoughts. Favorite doctor would be Dr. McCoy. Favorite first officer would be Commander Riker. Pretty easy for me. And another one from Russell. Hey, Steve, NYPD Blue question this time, something I wanted to get back to, and that was Detective Hatcher and how you said you thought his story was solid. Me personally, I thought it was just there to add story and tension between him and Andy, although Andy pulling a gun on him and threatening him was something I didn't see coming my first time through. What in his arc did you like? I guess I just wanted a little more elaboration because before your answer don't misunderstand me, I didn't hate that arc. I just found it unnecessary. Hopefully I see you tonight. If not, have a great stream. Well, thank you, my friend. I mean, it is unnecessary. I mean, it's a story arc on a TV show. There's no such thing as a necessary story. It's a story that the writers chose to tell. I liked it because it was a different kind of conflict for the show. It was a sort of a rotten apple in their squad room. It wasn't Andy and that by that point it was John. It was John Jr. or John Clark, because John Kelly was a John Jr. too. It was Sipowicz and Clark were the main detectives at that point, and their conflict was with another detective in their squad. It wasn't another detective who worked somewhere else. It wasn't with internal affairs. It wasn't with one of the street cops. It was another detective in their squad that they had this conflict with. And I just thought that was something that they had never done before on the show. And I thought it was interesting. And it kind of, they were heading into the latter portion of the show at that point, and it kind of kept things interesting. It kept the show from feeling as much like it was running out of steam as it probably was by then. Ben Douglas, hi, Steve. How do recent advances in AI recontextualize Dr. Pulaski's reaction to data for you? I feel like you can relate to her sentiment. Oh, great. Now AI slop is a commander in Starfleet. Well, no, not really, because data is not analogous to AI slop. Data is a person. And yes, you can categorize data as artificial intelligence because he's not organic and he was created by a cyberneticist and he has programming and all that sort of thing. But data exists as a living, thinking, conscious being. Uh, AI models, as they currently exist, do not. If nobody sends a prompt to an AI model, it's not going to do anything. Like ChatGPT is not sitting there thinking about things unless somebody is asking it a question or giving it a task. And even then, it's like, would you call what it does thinking? Some people would, some people wouldn't. But it's not independent of any user input. It's not conscious. It's not thinking about things. It's not having experiences. It's not making conscious choices that it weighs the reason or the morality of. It's responding to inquiries from users according to its admittedly very impressive and very sophisticated programming, but it's not a living thing. It's not conscious. It's not sentient. Data is. So I really don't equate the two at all, unless maybe you could consider something like what we currently have that we call AI, like a large language model. You could maybe look at that as like a distant ancestor of data. But the two are very different. So no, if Dr. Pulaski were to say, "Oh, AI slop is a commander in Starfleet," that would be not. I mean, that would be a very mean thing for her to say to data. And she, I mean, Pulaski might say something like that, like early on in her season on the show, because she doesn't like data and she does dismiss him as a machine. But we, as the viewer, would know that she was completely wrong because that's not what data is. Data is not AI slop. Data is a true artificial intelligence that experiences the world. So no, so it doesn't really affect Dr. Pulaski's reaction to data for me at all. Kara the Tolkien Nerd. Hi, Steve. Hubby paid for a day's access so I could get on the net. No question tonight, just a sincere thank you for allowing me to ask weird questions and be part of the group every month. Kara. P.S. So glad that Trump hasn't won the Nobel Peace Prize. Me too, for a bunch of reasons, one of which is that's the subject of a comedy skit that I wrote today that I'm shooting tomorrow for Monday's video. So thanks for the idea, Trump, by not winning the Nobel Peace Prize that no serious person in the fucking world thought you ever deserved anyway. Thanks to your hubby for allowing you to have internet access. I know you're going through a move now, right? Which is why your internet access may be a little spotty. You are very welcome. I am glad to have you as a part of this community. I'm glad to have you as a supporter, for one thing, and I'm glad to have you for our monthly hangouts together. So you are very welcome, and I'm glad that you're with us. Damian Williams. Hey, Steve, I'm settled back in Pittsburgh and have the job situation on lockdown. I should be able to get back to the silly questions that insult Janeway in some way soon, but for now, I'm still running my GoFundMe. I need about $400 to $500 to cover my outstanding bills. If anyone can help out, I would much appreciate it. And Damon's GoFundMe is linked in the description of this video. In fact, I moved it up a couple of slots because of this question here. I think it's number 2 on the links in the video description, but it's pretty high on the list now. So if anybody can help out Damien, he says he only needs $400 or $500 more bucks to catch up to his bills. I'm so glad you're in a better situation now. I'm glad things are kind of leveling out for you, and I hope that you're able to crawl all the way out of the hole very, very soon, my friend. Mac, who managed to get from his house in Philly to NYC and back yesterday without actually touching anything on a subway. I'm magic. Congratulations. That is genuinely impressive. Greetings, Steve. I hope you're well. So, fall is here. Went from 80 to 50 in one day, and from failing democracy to autocracy in 9 months. We're special like that. I'm curious if you have any European friends you converse with regularly, and if so, how do you explain that we somehow have a completely different Overton window than they do? Um, I mean, I mostly just have to say it. I don't really go into too much detail as far as, the specifics of it, but I sometimes I have to remind people, especially when it comes to like the political alignment of our major parties. You know what I mean? Because people say like, "Oh, the Democrats, they're not a progressive party." Well, certainly they might not be by European standards, but for us, they're the best we got. So that's what we call them. You know what I mean? Like they're or especially the left and right thing. Well, the Democrats aren't a leftist party. Well, no, they're not a leftist party in the sense that they represent positions on the far political left. But again, here in the US, we don't really have one of those, at least not as a major force in politics. So they are the leftmost party. Like the Republicans are on the right and the Democrats are on the left because those are the two major parties we have. And that's just the way it works here. And sometimes I do have to point that out to people who are more used to having more progressive politics in general where they live and also having a more complex political party system, where they, like in the UK, there are two major parties, but there are also a lot of smaller parties that have a hell of a lot more influence and power and representation in parliament than any minor parties do here in the United States. So, it's just things are different here. As you say in your question, we're special. And not in a good way in many circumstances. But no, I don't usually explain it, but I do sometimes have to remind people like, oh, it's different here. Dana, happy Friday. For me, it is a really happy Friday as it is now fall break. Not that I'll get much of a break. I need to type up minutes for the Democrats meeting, work on my application to the doctoral program, edit and upload videos from the Sarah Plain and Tall rehearsals, revisit my unit plan for the memoir, read more of That Dadgum Book. By the way, That Dadgum Book is The Great Gatsby, one of the great American novels ever published. That's the book that Dana is griping about having to read and teach to her students. But anyway, catch up on laundry and dishes, and I'm also planning to go visit my best friend who lives a few hours away. I'm so busy. Will you help me promote the book list I made to support my multilingual learners? I earned my ESOL endorsement a few years ago, and now I have students in my regular class whose first language isn't English. So I developed a list of classic and current titles that have been revised for English language support. The list is at, and there's the link. Would you be willing to put the link in the description so it's clickable and maybe show some of the books I have on it? So the link to Dana's Amazon wish list is in the video description. You can all click on it to check it out for yourself. And Dana also sent along a screenshot of her book list, and you can see it here. And actually, let me go ahead and make this bigger. Then I'll see if I can kind of scroll through it. So you can see there is Talented Mr. Ripley, One of Us is Lying, Three Musketeers, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Dracula, Huck Finn, A Wrinkle in Time, Anne of Green Gables, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Treasure Island, Little Women, I should have been shrinking it from the top as well, I suppose. The Call of the Wild, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Malala Yousafzai. I guess is that a book about her or is that her memoir? I'm not sure. A Christmas Carol, Robin Hood, The Diary of Anne Frank, Macbeth, and Romeo and Juliet. So there are the books on Dana's Amazon wish list for her ESOL students, and you can click on the link in the description to help her out with that if you feel like helping out Dana by purchasing an item on her wish list. And finally, I forgot Air One Fire, but you made it on time, my friend. Can you recommend me some very long shows I tried MacGyver, but got sucked through a wormhole. I know you like NYPD Blue, so I might try that. Any genre would be great except detective or medical. Best wishes. Well, if you don't like detective, you might have a problem with NYPD Blue. Although it's not like they're not mysteries. It's a cop show. It's a procedural more than a mystery show. But what's another nice long show that you might enjoy? Well, I mean, I mentioned All in the Family earlier. All in the Family ran, I think, counting Archie Bunker's Place, which was the spinoff / sequel to it. I think All in the Family ran for about 10 or 11 seasons. So that's a pretty big chunk. I had one in my mind just a second ago and it left. What was it? The Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone. It's 5 seasons, but it's a lot of episodes. There's like 30 episodes a season, so you might want to try that one too if you've never watched. You may have seen the original Twilight Zone, but if you haven't, check it out. But yeah, give NYPD Blue a shot. If you get into that and you want to watch another really great cop show, Homicide: Life on the Street, fantastic cop show, fantastic show just in general. I love me some Homicide: Life on the Street. All right, that is it for the question. I think a lot of you patrons and members have been practicing writing shorter questions. So even though there were 41 questions this time, actually, I think there were 40 because there were 41 because there were 42 in total, but somebody submitted their question twice. So there were 41 questions that I answered just now. But it's only 7:30 Eastern time. And remember the last couple of shows, I've been like going through the patron and member questions, and it's been like 8 o'clock or almost 8 o'clock before I even get finished. So you see this? This is proof of concept. A lot of you are, writing shorter questions already in anticipation of the 500 character limit. And here we are. Huh? See, God, I'm smart. God, I'm so fucking smart. I'm going to sit and just enjoy how smart I am. And while I do that, why don't you all watch a brand new Stuffy and Friends short that I actually just shot and edited this week. It's a fresh Stuffy and Friends short, and it will go up as a standalone YouTube short tomorrow at noon Eastern on this channel. But because you are watching Ask Away right now, you get to see it before anybody else. So please do now enjoy a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. We ready for movie night?
You bet.
What film have you chosen for this evening's private exhibition?
Superman. Not again.
You know I read for Crypto and did not receive a call back.
For fuck's sake.
Why do you taunt me?
Do you not want to watch Superman?
We have watched it a lot lately.
Yeah, but this time we're going to watch the Blu-ray.
I thought we watched the bloody Blu-ray last week.
No, I got the Blu-ray last week, but we couldn't watch it because I got the 4K Blu-ray and my Blu-ray player couldn't play 4K Blu-rays. It could only upscale standard Blu-rays and DVDs to 4K, so I had to get a new 4K Blu-ray player so I could watch my Superman 4K Blu-ray, which I did. These are all things I actually did. So last week, we watched Superman on HBO Max again, and now that the new Blu-ray player is here, we can all enjoy Superman on 4K Blu-ray.
Can we not just skip to the Mr. Terrific bits?
No, we're going to watch the whole thing.
How many more times will you ask that I suffer through the mediocre performance of the dog they cast as Crypto while living with the agonizing certainty that my own portrayal would have been infinitely superior?
I mean, I can't give you a number, but if I could, it would be really high.
I wouldn't mind seeing it again.
You are dead to me.
Your betrayal tastes as bitter as the kiss of Judas Iscariot.
I like it. It's a good movie.
Oh, me and Stuffy are on the same side this time. You two are so done.
If we're going to watch this for the 900th bloody time, I'm going to need to get a lot drunker than I currently am. Oi, what's your name? Ride along with me to the liquor store so if I get pulled over, you can tell the copper you were driving.
Shotgun.
You don't have to call shotgun if there's only 2 of us.
9, I was asking if you have a shotgun to defend us against the brutality of the police if necessary.
Who needs a shotgun? Do you not think I can handle myself against some paler?
You want to watch the making of while we wait for him to get back?
Sure.
If Lex Luthor kidnapped you to a pocket universe, I'd turn myself into the government to save you.
I know. And if you were trapped in an anti-proton river being swept toward a black hole, I'd fly over and try to pull you out.
I know, buddy. If we had superpowers.
Right, if we had superpowers. If we didn't have superpowers, we'd be dead.
We'd be so dead.
Definitely.
Lex Luthor would kill us so fast. Ta-da! And let me restart my live chat viewer, as I usually have to do, because it's so reliable. And by the way, the story that the stuffy version of Steve tells about having to get a new Blu-ray player to watch the 4K Superman Blu-ray is a true story. So much to my chagrin, I got Superman on Blu-ray, and specifically on 4K Blu-ray, because I thought the Blu-ray player I had would play 4K Blu-rays. I think I even looked it up, and I somehow was under the impression that it would, and then it didn't. So I got a new goddamn Blu-ray player. So yeah, that's who you're dealing with. That's who you're dealing with here. Somebody said something earlier, and by the way, hi everybody. We'll spend the rest of the show hanging out with the chat. Barbara Kruger spread around some gift memberships. Thank you very much, Barbara. I appreciate that. And it was people agreeing with me about Homicide. Wolfram and Hart said Homicide: Life on the Street was done by the same writer as The Wire. Yes, David Simon. Brilliant show, especially the Vincent D'Onofrio episode. Oh my God, what a great episode. Just rips your heart right out of your chest. What a great episode. My God. There are a bunch of great Homicide episodes. Like, it's just a brilliant show. Until the last season. The last season, it kind of takes a dip. But up until then, it's just can't miss. The D'Onofrio episode is a masterpiece and will absolutely gut you. If you have never watched it, it will fucking gut you. It's brilliant. I don't think you're too late, Jan. I'm going to be going for another half hour or so. I think you're good. Steve S says, good thing you're smart because you ain't got looks. Kidding, my friend, you're very handsome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the insult followed by the compliment. I feel like that's a really good 1-2 punch. I think they call that negging. Do they call that? Or no, negging, you're not supposed to follow up with a compliment, are you? You're just supposed to, like, insult someone and then be like, I think she likes me. Serena Geek suggests MASH for the long-running show. Yeah. I have never been, here's the thing. I've never watched a lot of MASH. It does qualify as like a long-running series, for sure. I was never really into MASH, honestly. I've seen a couple episodes and it just doesn't grab me. Like, I acknowledge that it was a really important show. I got respect for it, but like from a distance, like it never really grabbed me. So, but yes, that would be another one. If you're looking for a long show to sort of, dive into, that would definitely be one to think about. Oh, Jan, okay. This helps. This helps. Just have to say, everyone should know your drag name is the name of your first pet and the name of the street you lived on as a child. Okay, so mine would be Star Martin. Or Star Big Spring Road, because they adjusted our address when I was a child. When I was born, our house was still considered in the town limits, and so our address was Martin Street. And then at some point they redrew the boundaries of the town, so our house was officially like the second house beyond the town limits. So even though it was the exact same road, our part of it was renamed Big Spring Road. So my drag name would be, and Star was my first dog, my only dog to date. So my drag name, by that reckoning, would either be Star Martin or Star Big Spring Road, or Star Big Spring, I guess. Oh, Zebediah Strange, the original Hawaii Five-0. There you go. That's a nice long run. Um, X-Files. X-Files is a good one. Again, I mean, it really kind of takes a dip in quality after around season 6, but you've got 9 seasons of it. So, Hill Street Blues, sure. Yeah. Um, Isaiah Taylor says, I find it humbling that the Voyager and Pioneer messages and their respective spacecraft that carry them will likely outlast the Milky Way and will be the only memory of our species. Will they outlast the Milky Way? Will they last that long? I mean, that's really cool if true. I've never heard that before. But yes, I mean, it is nice to think, I mean, it's nice to think that something so optimistic and so forward looking and it's, I mean, it's a blending of science and humanism, you know, because it's a scientific mission. It's reaching out into the universe to learn about it in a physical and astronomical way. But it also, yeah, the records contain music and art and bits of our culture. And yeah, it's nice to know that will be out there, what maybe somebody, maybe some other form of intelligent life will find it someday and know about us. Maybe not. I don't know, but it's nice that we sort of put that out there into the universe, isn't it? Hey, Kirok, you made it. There's also the Hulk, says Geek. Yeah, but the Hulk only ran for 4 seasons, I think, didn't it? I mean, not that 4 seasons or maybe 5 seasons, but it didn't have like a super long run. It had a very respectable run, but it wasn't on for like 8 or 9 seasons. But yeah, I mean, I would always recommend watching The Incredible Hulk. That's a great fucking show. Nomadic synth. When you're so unpopular that your town rezones to get rid of you. That had to be my dad's fault. If it wasn't me. I was just a kid. I think I was maybe 9 or 10 when that happened. It wasn't me. Although, you know what's really funny? I think it may have been like a county-wide thing because the house that I'm in right now used to be my grandparents' house. And its street number changed at one point as well. The street name, the street name is the same. They didn't, they assigned new street numbers. So, and it was completely different. Like the old street number this house had was 3 digits and the new one is like 6 digits. Like they really changed it. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody was offended by my pap and granny here as well, and they were also pissed off about my dad. They didn't want him to be officially part of the town. I have no idea. That's really funny. Yeah, The Prisoner is great, but yeah, it's only 1 season. 255 AD says, what would you say to someone who insists a Trump voter they know is a good person because of a load of good deeds in other areas of their life? Life is too short to get into arguments with people about shit like that. I don't care. If you need to believe that your Trump voting friend or relative is a good person because they did some good things before they voted to fuck the entire country, okay, go ahead. Believe whatever you want. I don't care. I'm not interested. Like, I've got other shit to worry about than convincing you that actually your friend is a piece of shit. Let me see. Oh, Nishintaki says, I used to enjoy the MASH movie when I was younger, but it hasn't held up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was ever, I've watched it once or twice in my life. I think the most recent time was for Late Seating. I really didn't enjoy it. And I'm a fan of Robert Altman's films in general. I think Robert Altman was a brilliant filmmaker. But MASH just doesn't do it for me. I mean, it's a comedy, but it doesn't make me laugh. And if you're a comedy and you're not making me laugh, you've pretty much lost me right there, so I'm not a fan of MASH the movie either. Oh, Greg Gildersleeve suggests from the UK, Coronation Street. Yeah, and actually, I mean, we have soap operas over here in the US as well that have been running for 30, 40, 50 years. So yeah, if you can find old episodes of like if you can find like an archive of fucking General Hospital or something that has all of the episodes dating back to as long as they still have copies of them, then yeah, go for that. That'll keep you busy for a while. Jesus. Kara asks, who did my dad upset? I guess the mayor. I don't know. Whoever was in charge of drawing the of drawing the boundaries of the town. I have no idea. It's hard to tell. He My dad is a wonderful guy. I love my dad. We get along great. I owe him an incredible amount. And like I said, we get along great now. And he has definitely mellowed in his later years. But when my dad was younger, he was a lot of trouble for a lot of people. So who knows who my dad could have. This is assuming that the rezoning of the town had anything to do with him, which is just a joke. But let's just say it did. It could have been anything. Like it could have been anything. 255 AD says, imagine another civilization's version of the Voyager probe crash landed on Mars in the 60s, and we sent a manned mission to retrieve it in the 80s. Good alternate history idea? Yeah. Yeah, I would be interested in seeing where that goes for sure. Member message for Kirok says, hey, Steve, usually my best questions come after I get off work, so here goes. Ooh, what is the best film sequel? I'll give you my answer, Godfather 2, but wanted to know yours. Godfather 2 might be my answer too. Godfather 2 is on a very short list of not only really good sequels, but sequels that I think are better than the original. As much as I admire The Godfather, and the original Godfather is a fucking masterpiece, I think Godfather 2 is better. So Godfather 2 might be my pick as well. But I mean, there are others. I mean, Empire Strikes Back, Spider-Man 2, a long-standing personal favorite of mine that I just got to watch on the big screen for the 8th time. Yeah, that's 8. Just recently, and that I wrote a video about. My Wednesday video next week is going to be about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man 2 is up there as far as best sequels. What's another really great sequel? I mean, if we're staying in superheroes, Superman 2, great fucking sequel. But yeah, Godfather 2. Godfather 2, I think I agree with you on that. Geek says, I saw you post this on social media too. I just got shot twice with my COVID and my flu shot. Did you get your increased autism in 5G? I have not. I need to get mine. I haven't gotten mine yet. And I should get a flu shot as well. Yeah. Terminator 2. That's a good one. That's a good one. Arrow on Fire. Yeah. Terminator 2. Wrath of Khan. That's a good one, Geek. Aliens. Yeah. I think I prefer Alien to Aliens, but Aliens is still a great movie and definitely deserves mention as far as best sequels for sure. Nishikantaki, Gunsmoke. Yeah, boy. If you're looking for a long-running show, absolutely, Gunsmoke. Octuple Viewing, Slug Racer. Yes, that Spider-Man 2 was and is my all-time champion for seeing a movie multiple times in the theater. I saw it 7 times the year it came out, which would have been 2004, and I saw it once like 2 weeks ago for the re-release, and so that makes 8. Although there is if you're pickier about it than I am, and I don't see why you would be because it's my list of movies I've seen, but whatever. You might put an asterisk next to number 8 because it was the Spider-Man 2.1 cut. It wasn't the original theatrical cut. It was the Spider-Man 2.1 cut, which does have a few extra scenes and some extended scenes and some alternate takes. So it's not the exact same movie that I saw 7 times, but it's more or less the exact same movie. It's not that different. And it's still good. I prefer the theatrical cut because I think the theatrical cut is pretty much a perfect movie. But the 2.1 cut is very good. Kara says, if we ever have another film watch along, have you considered Sky High? No, I haven't, but I'll take that under consideration. I would like to do another movie watch along with Dana. We haven't really talked about it. There are a couple of movies that I think would be good for it. But we'll put Sky High on the maybe pile. Super chat from Kirok. Thank you, my friend. Major debate today at work. We were debating this. Terminator 2 was the majority in today's debate, and one mentioned The Empire Strikes Back, and I was like, what? Godfather 2 beats them all by a mile. Well, I agree with you. I think Godfather 2 is better than Terminator 2 and better than Empire Strikes Back. But I mean, Godfather 2 is not a popular movie. Like, it wasn't a big summer blockbuster. You know, more people have seen Terminator 2. People who were of the right age when Terminator 2 came out probably have fond memories of going to see it in a theater, seeing it for the first time, being blown away by it. And Terminator 2 is a really, really great movie. So, I mean, it's not like a crazy pick, but I agree with you. I think Godfather 2 is better. Oh, Geek wants to know classic 80s action movies. Oh, boy. My oldest brother is making sure my youngest brother sees all the great action and thrillers from the 80s, like Die Hard, Predator, RoboCop. That's a good starter list right there. I mean, if you can sort of separate yourself from the politics and just enjoy them as fun, cheesy action movies, I would say the Rambo movies and pretty much any Chuck Norris movie from the 80s. Missing in Action. My personal favorite, Lone Wolf McQuade. Just ridiculous. There's a scene in Lone Wolf McQuade where Chuck Norris is in he has a Jeep, and he's in his Jeep, and they bury the Jeep. The bad guys bury the Jeep. They drop it in a deep hole and they cover it with dirt. And Chuck Norris is like trapped in it, and he is guzzling beer while revving up the motor in his Jeep. And he somehow drives his Jeep up out of the hole that it was buried in. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I love it. So I would recommend that as well. Boxy Brown, Bloodsport, Kickboxer. Yeah, for sure. Kirok, Fredo, I know it was you. You broke my heart. You broke my heart. 225 AD says, look who's talking too, says Stephen G. Clark. A classic sequel. 255 AD says, I get flu shots because my autism diagnosis means I'm on some database of people with disabilities. Should I feel guilty about that since my physical health is fine? No. You get a flu shot to prevent getting the flu. Healthy people should get flu shots too. Or are you saying, should you feel guilty because you're in a database of people with disabilities when you don't consider yourself disabled? Well, that's not on you. That wasn't your decision. I don't see why it has anything to do with you. Roadhouse. There you go, Kane 20C. Okay, classic 80s action movies. You got to have Roadhouse in there. Here's the thing. I'm always wanting to recommend to people Patrick Swayze movies. The problem is, as far as classic 80s action, is that the Swayze Holy Trilogy, which for me is Dirty Dancing, Roadhouse, and Point Break. Dirty Dancing isn't an action movie. I love Dirty Dancing, but it's not an action movie, so it's not applicable to this conversation. But it was in the 80s. It came out in 87, so, it's there. But Roadhouse was 89, and Point Break, the other one, great action movie, 91. So not an 80s movie. But if you're willing to, fudge the boundaries on the decade a little bit, Point Break should be on that list as well, because that is a great movie. Escape from New York? Hell yeah. That's a good one, Zebediah. Lethal Weapon, sure. Yeah, Lethal Weapon, yeah. Enter the Dragon is 70s, but I mean all those great the 60s and 70s, like the Shaw Brothers martial arts stuff and the Bruce Lee movies are terrific. 255 AD says, as a kid, were you impressed by the CG effects of Odo transforming? I mean, it didn't like knock me out of my shoes or anything. I thought it was cool. I thought it looked good, but I mean, you saw those sort of morphing effects a lot back then. I mean, that, speaking of Terminator 2, it's kind of it's a similar effect to the sort of liquefied T-1000 effect. I thought it looked good. Like, it didn't, again, I think probably because I had already seen it in things like Terminator 2, so I was familiar with the effect. I wasn't like completely, crazy for it, but I thought it was good. I liked it. Commando. Oh, They Live. There you go, Geek. That's a great one. Yes, Commando is good. They Live is good. I think somebody already mentioned Predator. Yeah, Jackie Chan's Hong Kong stuff, Police Story, absolutely. Big Trouble in Little China, that's a good one. Top Gun, yeah, sure. You know what else? I mean, Top Gun is all right. I don't have a problem with Top Gun. But speaking of great sequels, and God, legacy sequels, incredibly belated sequels, Top Gun Maverick was better than it had any business being. Like, Top Gun Maverick was so much better than it had any business being. Like a fucking 30 years late legacy sequel to Top Gun. And turns out that's a goddamn good movie. Yeah, Isaiah says, I love the sequel as a plane guy. I love the sequel as a good movie guy. So we're on the same page there. Oh, Jay Metal with a super chat. Thank you very much. Says, what's more real, aliens or Bigfoot? I mean, can I say they're both equally fake? What's more real, purple elephants or pink unicorns? I mean, I guess Bigfoot would be more real just because it's theoretically terrestrial and you don't have to assume the existence of an entire other alien civilization to account for it. So I guess on that basis, I would say Bigfoot is more real in theory, but like, I don't think either aliens or Bigfoot. I mean, I think there are probably aliens out in the universe somewhere, but aliens like visiting Earth and flying saucers and abducting people and stuff, no, I don't think any of that is real at all. Has anybody said, Zabadiah said Remo Williams. Has anybody said Buckaroo Banzai? Would we call that an action movie? I guess. Kinda. But Buckaroo Banzai. Batman 89. Yeah, Batman 89 you should see. I agree. I don't think I think its popularity kind of outstrips its quality. It's not a personal favorite of mine, except for nostalgia, because I remember being 9 when it opened, and I enjoy watching it for that. But like, just as a movie on its own merit, I think it's been eclipsed multiple times just by Batman movies over the years, let alone other superhero movies. But yeah, just if you haven't seen it, you should see it just to say you saw it, because it was a huge deal culturally at the time, for sure. Super chat from Stephen Clenard. Thank you, my friend. Fun fact, Schwarzenegger refused to wear underwear during the filming of Commando. Method acting. You know what? It comes through in the performance. You can tell that he takes the Commando role seriously. And I feel like if you had been able to see visible panty line, you would have ruined it. You'd be like, what the fuck? This guy's not a Commando. I know I told this story on the late seating review of Predator that we did, but one of my favorite pieces of like actor trivia that I have ever heard is the story of how when they were shooting Predator, they had a gym like on location for the actors to work out in, because all the main guys in Predator were like buff guys. So they had a gym so they could work out, during the shoot. And well, there's the story most people know is that Jesse the Body Ventura and Arnold Schwarzenegger got into like a workout contest. Like they tried to outdo each other as to like how long they could work out and, you know, how much weight they could press and all that stuff. A lot of people know that story. My favorite story, though, is that Carl Weathers would only work out when nobody else was in the gym. He worked out in secret because he told his castmates that actually he had never worked out and his body just looked like that. And I love that he went to such lengths to live out that absurd and obvious lie that he was like getting up at 2:00 in the morning to go work out alone in the gym so he could still stay in incredible shape. But nobody ever saw him working out. So he could say, oh, I don't work out. I just look like this. My body just is like this. Okay, let me see. Isaiah with a super chat. Batman and Robin, that Alicia S suit up. I mean, you know what? If that does it for you, buddy, God be with you. I mean, I'm not complaining. Alicia Silverstone is beautiful, but like, is it enough to justify the entire movie? I don't know about that. Zabadiah says, have you ever done a review on the Alien Voices audio series? No, I have not. That would be interesting, though. The Alien Voices were, they were a series of sort of radio plays, basically, with, I think Leonard Nimoy was either the brains behind it, or he was definitely involved with it. And it was a lot of Star Trek actors as well. Yeah, they did some interesting stuff. Boxy Brown, I didn't know that. Herschel Walker lied about never working out too. So he stole it from Carl Weathers. You know, I already didn't respect Herschel Walker. Now I respect him even less. You know, not only do you lie, but you steal Carl Weathers' lie. And when Carl Weathers did it, it was funny and awesome. When Herschel Walker did it, not so much. Chris HB, thank you for the super chat. Says retro review idea, favorite way of breaking Order 1. So like breaking the Prime Directive, like episodes where they break the Prime Directive. That's an idea. I might be able to do something with that. Yeah, I'll think about that. Thanks for the suggestion. 255 AD says, did you know some people think Bigfoot is the Nephilim from the Bible? I ran into a guy on Reddit who thought that. I have actually heard that. Yes, I've actually heard that. Lots of people have a lot of really just asinine ideas about Bigfoot and about angels and various other creatures from the Bible as well. Thanks for stopping by, Sentai Ranger Donnie. And good luck to the Mariners. Go Mariners. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoy the game. Yeah, Geek, as far as Batman and Robin, like, I mean, I'll just say what I've said a few times in the past couple of years, which is the last couple of times I watched it, I mean, I don't think Batman and Robin is a good movie at all, but I find it much easier to get through than Batman Forever. Batman Forever, the last time I watched it, was a fucking chore to sit through. Like, it was rough to watch that whole movie. Batman and Robin is also terrible, but it's terrible in a much more watchable way. Batman Forever is just a fucking slog for me, man. It's rough. Okay, Boxy. Herschel Walker lied about lifting weights. He claimed he only did push-ups and sit-ups. Okay. I mean, it's still a weird thing to lie about. Chris HB, thank you, my friend. Says, I dig your content. You're a big part of my mental health. Well, no pressure. Thank you. Kirok says, with another super chat, thank you very much, says, how many captains actually broke the Prime Directive? You know what? I don't know off the top of my head. Haven't they all broken it at some point? I mean, I guess technically Archer didn't break it because his series was set before the Prime Directive existed. But you can look at examples of things he did that would have broken the Prime Directive if it had been in effect. But haven't they all broken it at one point or another? I have to look that up. Is there a Star Trek captain Like, who was like the main character of a series, not just someone that we met like for one episode, but like, is there a Star Trek captain who was the lead in their show who never broke the Prime Directive? Yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's an interesting question. Yeah, Captain, I would, off the top of my head, I would say all of them. Oh, Geek, absolutely. Batman v Superman. And 300 as well. Yeah, for sure. I would rather watch Batman Forever or Batman and Robin than either one of those. Absolutely. Isaiah Taylor says, were you ever a fan of Unsolved Mysteries or Forensic Files? Yes, especially Unsolved Mysteries. I have watched a good bit of Forensic Files over the years, but Unsolved Mysteries was on and was a big popular show when I was a kid. And man, I watched that every week. I loved Unsolved Mysteries. And about 4 or 5 years ago, when it first popped up on Amazon Prime, I rewatched it. Like, they put the entire original Unsolved Mysteries series up on, I think, on somewhere streaming. I think it was Amazon Prime. And I watched it again, and talk about a nostalgia rush. Oh, man, I loved that show. I was a huge Unsolved Mysteries fan. And Rescue 911 as well. And America's Most Wanted. I watched all that fucking shit. Boxy Brown says Ivy and Batman and Robin made a 9-year-old me feel things. Well, okay, so I mean, it was important, you know. It was an important movie in your growth and your experience in figuring out who you were, I guess. I don't blame you. Uma Thurman. What's to complain about there? Air One Fire says, doesn't Unsolved Mysteries push supernatural bullshit? Boy, does it. Does it ever. That's what I love about that show. What I love about Unsolved Mysteries is the fact that most of the time it was fairly straightforward, like true crime type stuff. It was like someone who was abducted and was never found, or like an unsolved murder, or it was, like it was crime stuff. But then every so often, it would be like some crazy conspiracy, like ships disappearing in the Bermuda Triangle, or fucking Bigfoot, or an alien abduction. And you never knew. So there would be stuff that was, probably pretty legit and real. And it'd be like, if you know who killed this family of 12, call our 800 number and maybe you can help solve a mystery. And then the very next one is, if you can tell us anything about the aliens that stole this guy's shoe, or whatever. It was like, and that's what I liked about it. That's what I liked about it, is that it seemed to draw no distinction at all between like plausible crime-based stories and just complete Looney Tunes bullshit. 255 AD says, do you think it's possible to be a good progressive while being a conspiracy theorist? I guess it depends on how you define a good progressive. I mean, if you support progressive causes and you vote for progressive candidates and you generally use whatever political power and whatever power as like an activist and the member of a community that you have to make people's lives better and to support progressive causes, but you also happen to think that Oswald didn't shoot JFK or something like that, I guess that doesn't disqualify you from being a good progressive. But I mean, I certainly don't think it helps. I think no matter what your political goals are, it never hurts to have your fucking head screwed on all the way. And taking conspiracy theories seriously and believing in them suggests to me that you're a little too credulous for your own good, and that your critical thinking faculties aren't as tightened up as they need to be. So I mean, I don't think that necessarily means you can't possibly be a good progressive and you can't be a force for good in terms of like social change and doing good in your community. But it's something I would kind of look at cockeyed if I found that out about you, you know? I mean, there was someone that I used to be related to through marriage who was maybe the smartest person I have ever personally known. Not like a genius or anything, but just in terms of his depth of knowledge and his breadth of interest, just a really, really smart, sharp guy who was at least open to the idea that the moon landings were faked. And even though I still respected him and still admired his intelligence, that was like a big thing. It was like, you think the moon landings were fake? Like, what? You know, it's like, it matters. It makes a difference. Do I think it makes all the difference? Maybe not, but it's there. Damian Williams with a member message says, being an in-debt nerd is torturing me right now. Both Star Trek Adventures and G.I. Joe RPG have booked to pre-order. I absolutely want. Timing sucks. I sympathize with you in theory. But being sad that you can't buy RPG books is something that I profoundly do not relate to. But I'm sorry that it is causing you distress. In Search Of, yeah, Stephen and William are mentioning In Search Of, yeah, that very similar to Unsolved Mysteries. Well, actually, I mean, In Search Of was almost all pseudoscience, wasn't it? There wasn't a lot of like plausible seeming stuff in Search Of. It was pretty much nothing but like Fortean bullshit, right? Michael Hanlon. Now, this is a good way to put it. This seems reasonable to me. A good progressive supports workers' rights and underprivileged groups. The rest is icing. Yeah, I think that's an acceptable way to look at it. Now, yeah, and Boxy Brown says something similar. All that really matters is how you vote and how you treat other people. I would agree. And Geek also brings up a good point. Which conspiracy theories do they believe in? Like if there's someone who believes the Jews are behind everything bad, then yeah, that might be disqualifying for you being a good progressive, because how would that not affect other things in your life? You know, like that's some really dark, deeply rooted anti-Semitism if you really believe that. And how could that not bleed into other aspects of your life? Isaiah says, is it bad that I still like paranormal stories despite being a rational person? I'm an atheist, but I love Touched by an Angel. No, it's not a problem at all. I mean, you recognize that it's a story. No, I love Highway to Heaven. I unironically, sincerely love that show. I love Highway to Heaven. I'm an atheist, as you know. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not embarrassed by that. I'd be more embarrassed by the fact that the show is so fucking corny than embarrassed by the fact that it deals with, religious themes and presents the existence of God and angels as absolute facts. It's a story. I mean, am I embarrassed for liking Godzilla movies because there's no such thing as a giant lizard like that stomps around cities? Like, no, it's fiction. I don't feel bad about it, and neither should you. 225 AD says, why do you think a lot of conspiracy theory communities, even ones that seem like they wouldn't fit, like JFK or 9/11 truthers, have been absorbed by the right in recent years? I think 9/11 truthers fit like a glove with the right, to be honest. There was always something really right-wing about the 9/11 truth movement to me. Not the least of which being the aforementioned bed of anti-Semitism that ran underneath the whole fucking thing. It makes sense to me because the right wing, in terms of our two major political parties, the right wing is the one that offers the easy answers to everything, and conspiracy theorists want easy, clear-cut answers. Even if they believe in like a really complicated convoluted conspiracy theory. At the bottom of that is the idea that there is a clear-cut, simple answer to why this thing happened and who did it. And I know the answer because I've seen the evidence and you haven't, and I know and you don't. And that's an attitude that is very, very prevalent on the right as well. So, I mean, to me, that's what the commonality is and the attraction is. Kirok, you know, I never watched Little House on the Prairie. Being a Michael Landon fan, I would imagine that if I did watch it, I would enjoy it because I do really like Michael Landon as an actor, but I've never really watched it. So I don't know. Wolfram and Hart, about Sledgehammer. I used to love Sledgehammer. I watched Sledgehammer religiously when it was on. I mean, I'm sure, especially by today's standards, we would think it was politically incorrect. I mean, and I haven't watched it for a long time, so I really can't give you a clear-headed assessment of it. I just remember being a big fan of it. Winter says, my Star Trek lore is a little fuzzy, but a Vulcan's logic is their culture and religion rather than who they are innately, right? Yes. Yes, that's eventually what they settled on. In early Star Trek, it's not exactly clear, but eventually, yes, they settled on the logic is a devotion and a mental discipline that Vulcans have adopted. It's not something that they're born with, right? Edge's Dragon says, even the CG rocket launch in First Man doesn't look as realistic as the real rocket launch in the Apollo 11 documentary, which came out about the same time. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And I mean, even like the launch footage that they did for Apollo 13, which was celebrated at the time as being incredibly realistic and looks really good. I mean, if you compare it to the stock footage that they used in The Right Stuff, because for The Right Stuff, I think all of the shots of rockets launching in The Right Stuff is stock footage of actual launches. And of course it looks better because it's the real thing. It looks better. It looks real because it's real, you know? And even the fact that it's documentary footage and it's not as artfully shot. You know, there isn't like that plunging shot of like the rocket going up while the camera goes down along the side that you see in Apollo 13. You know, that's a very artistic shot. And just that fact alone makes it feel a little unreal because it's like, well, in real life, we'd never see it we would never see it this way, which isn't bad. It's a movie. It's creative. It's, you know, those are the kind of liberties you can take in a fiction film with that degree of technology at your disposal, but it doesn't make it feel real because it doesn't match with our experience of watching an actual rocket launch. Yeah, Kira, with another super chat. Thank you, Kirak. Michael Landon and Victor French are in both. Yes. Yes, I know. I just haven't seen Little House. Boxy, a Sledgehammer on YouTube. I might have to check that out because it's been a long time since I watched it. Winter says, what do you think about the idea that Vulcans are treated as masters of logic to be Vulcan propaganda to give them a degree of soft power negotiations? That's an interesting suggestion. I don't think has that ever been in any of the shows, or is that just something that fans kind of came up with? I mean, it's an interesting idea. I don't remember ever noticing it in any of the shows that any of the characters ever suggested that, but it's an interesting idea. 255 AD says, you think the Enterprise writers were dumb for trying to incorporate ideas no before TOS has seen a Romulan, like rather than just retconning it and telling the fans to go to hell? No, I don't see why they had to have Romulans in Enterprise at all. I mean, yeah, it's not so much. I mean, look, if the writers of Enterprise had decided we want to tell a Romulan story and we're just going to disregard canon and just do it, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I mean, if you have a good story to tell, then tell it, is my attitude, as I think everybody who watches my shit regularly knows. But at the same time, I mean, if you're doing a show that is set in an earlier era of an established fictional universe, there's no reason why you can't just keep making up aliens, which Enterprise also did, you know. I mean, there's no reason why you have to have Romulans in it at all. I think they use Romulans too much anyway. I think there's way too much Romulan shit in the latter day Star Treks as it is. Like there has been this period of Star Trek production in the movies and in the TV shows where it's like they were just in Romulan mode. Everybody was just preoccupied with the Romulans. And I'm like, weren't they more interesting when they were mysterious and we didn't see them that often? Like, why are we? Like, I don't want to know about don't you want to know about Romulan culture? No. They're supposed to be remote and mysterious and unknowable. Why the fuck do I want to know about Romulan culture? That defeats the whole point. You know? Boxy Brown, I don't think did anybody see a Romulan during Enterprise? I don't think so. Well, 255 AD says, what's the point in being a Star Trek show if you're not going to use the iconic aliens? Well, I mean, you can use some of them, but, you know, you can also make up your own. Which I think Enterprise, like, you know, the first episode of Enterprise had a very strong connection to the Klingons. They decided to do the first encounter between Klingons and humans as a big part of the first episode of Enterprise. That's a reasonable starting point if you're going to do a Star Trek prequel show. You know, what's a big event in the history of the universe of Star Trek? Oh, humans and Klingons running into each other for the first time. Okay, well, let's do something with that. Like, that's a reasonable starting point. And Klingons are a definitive Star Trek alien, as are Vulcans. And Vulcans played a really big part in Enterprise too. So they've got those in place. Okay, well, there you go. You now feel free to make up your own shit, which they frequently did. With mixed results, but I mean, there's no problem with trying it. Wolfram and Hart with a super chat. And after this, I'm going to start wrapping up the show. I'm going to do my regular closing of the show spiel and kind of bring this to a conclusion. So after this super chat from Wolfram and Hart, if anybody has any final questions, you can go ahead and start throwing them in the chat, and I'll handle those after I get through my end of show spiel. But Wolfram and Hart says, much like not using all Pokemon released in Pokemon Go, do you keep organized track of how many Star Trek main episodes have been done so far? You mean like for my review series? Yes, I do. Or you mean just in total? Do I keep track of how many Star Trek episodes have been produced? Not actively. No. I mean, it's easy enough to find that out if I need to know that for some reason, but no, I don't keep like a running tab myself. But yes, but I do keep track of the episodes that I review in my retro review series for sure. All right. Geek is throwing in the links for people that need our help. And while they are doing that, let me go ahead and say that I very much appreciate you all being here. And I appreciate those of you who are patrons and members. I appreciate your support. And those of you who are not patrons and members, I appreciate your support too, because it helps that you watch, that you like the stream, that you share it with people on social media. That really, really helps. And I really appreciate it, just as I appreciate your participation in the chat and your questions and comments and all of that. If you are not a patron or a member and you would like to become one to help me to continue to do this YouTube thing, which, as one of the earlier patron and member questions pointed out, is my main job and is a job I love and would like to continue to do for as long as possible. You can help me to continue doing that by becoming a supporter, by being a patron or a member. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or you can just click the join button right here on YouTube to become a channel member. Either way, if you are a patron or a member, you can submit questions ahead of time for these twice monthly Ask Away live streams. I will put up a call for questions the Monday before. I'm going to do one of these on Friday. And if you are a patron or a member, you can ask a question ahead of time. And that will be among the questions that I answer in the first part of the show. Just a little extra thing I throw out there to say thank you to my patrons and members, without whom I could not continue to do this. Also, if you enjoy this YouTube thing that I do, you might also like some of the podcasts that I am a regular cast member of. They are part of the Lemmy Listen family of podcasts. I am a co-host on Late Seating, the movie review podcast, with my very best friend in the whole world, the hilarious and brilliant Jason Harding. And on that show, we review movies. We take a fresh look at classic movies and see if they deserve whatever reputation they have, be it good or bad. Our most recent episode is our review of the absolutely awful Dan Aykroyd quote-unquote comedy Nothing But Trouble. I don't mind spoiling it for you. I think it's garbage. But if you enjoy, and Jason's not a big fan of it either, so if you enjoy listening to me and Jason just absolutely rip a movie to shreds, listen to our new episode about Nothing But Trouble. I think you'll enjoy it. And if you like the Star Trek stuff, I'm also on the Ensign's Log with Jason and our friend Amanda Billings. And that is a Star Trek themed comedy podcast where we all play original characters that we have created who exist in the Star Trek universe. And the events of actual Star Trek shows are kind of going on in the background or off to the side while we are doing our thing and telling our stories. Right now we are in the we're circa season 3 of Deep Space Nine right now is where we're situated in terms of like the Star Trek franchise. But again, we tell our own stories, we do our own thing. It's a really fun show to do. It's a really funny show. Hopefully, if you haven't listened to it, you'll check it out and you'll enjoy it. And hopefully, if you have been listening to it, you have enjoyed it and will continue to enjoy it. Links to the shows are in the description. Also, don't forget charitylinks.page. Some Random Geek has been sharing individual links in the live chat. Please take advantage of those. And also check out some other links and some friends of ours who need help that are listed in charitylinks.page. If you have a few spare bucks lying around this month and you want to put them toward a good cause, please consider helping some of our friends in need through the resources linked in charitylinks.page and also in the live chat by our friend Some Random Geek. And I think that's just about it. Let me go back and find some final questions from the live chat. Yeah, Greg Gildersleeve says, Memory Alpha keeps track of the total number of episodes. Yeah, exactly. Why do I need to be doing it? Philip Kehoe says when they started TNG, they didn't want to use aliens from TOS too much, hence the Ferengi initially being the main antagonist species. Yeah, and that, again, I've often said the way TNG does it is the way that every subsequent show should do it. But in their own way. Like, don't literally copy TNG, but do your own version of what TNG did. Isaiah says, I will say that those shots in Apollo 13 and the model work made it real to me. That's why it's my favorite space film. I mean, it's a good one. You know, I think I've said before, given how amazing the real events of Apollo 13 were, I've always been a little disappointed in the movie that the movie didn't quite blow me away as much as I hoped it would. But Apollo 13 is a fucking fantastic movie, and the special effects are great. Captain says, if we didn't keep overusing Romulans, Picard season 1 wouldn't have had the incest twins villains. And wouldn't that have been just a tragedy? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Zebediah, thank you very much. Zebediah says, you're doing great work. I appreciate you saying that. Kara says, you and Jason should review Sky High if we don't do a watch along. I'll suggest it. Damian Williams, yes, Nothing But Trouble. The first appearance of Tupac. I think I say in the podcast when we review it, the few minutes of the film where Digital Underground just shows up out of nowhere is the only tolerable portion of the film for me. Digital Underground is there. Humpty Hump is there doing his thing. They do a song. It's kind of cool. You know, I dig old school hip hop. I like Digital Underground. It's like, oh, this is all right for about 3 or 4 minutes. And then it's right back to the huge pile of shit that it is. Like, yeah, it's awful. It's awful. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. 255 AD says, do you think most 9/11 truthers or JFK truthers or whatever truthers know they're spreading anti-Semitism? Maybe not, but that doesn't, I mean, that doesn't excuse it in my book. I'm not saying it excuses it in your book either, but it certainly doesn't excuse it in my book. Oh, and Kara says, I'll call it a night, and the next time we chat, I should be moved into my new house. Awesome. Good luck with the finishing up the move, and congratulations. And I believe that will do it. So thank you all so very much once again for being here with me, for hanging out. And I will see you. I'll see you in 2 weeks for Ask Away stream number 200. Can you believe it'll be the 200th one of these that we've done together? And I'll see you a whole bunch of times in between that, in between now and then. So thank you all so much for everything. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And take care of yourselves, everybody.